And now I can't remember your name.
My name?
Yeah, I can't look you up on YouTube because I can't think who I'm talking to. Honestly.
How's that HRT working for you?
It's been early. It's a bit early days, isn't it? That's what I'm telling myself. It's only been a fortnight. You have to, I don't know how long it takes before it's supposed to, mend my brain.
I don't know. I mean, I never really, I don't think I found it did much from a brain fog. I think I just got used to it now.
Oh, maybe that's it. Yeah.
Oh, we haven't said hello.
I didn't know we'd started. Hello.
Welcome to episode 2. We've made it through the difficult first episode and into the second episode. We are now clearly podcast wizards.
I'm sure nobody expected it to get as far as episode 2.
I didn't last week when I was wrestling with trying to make it upload. I can tell you that for nothing.
I'm just literally looking now at the comments on last week's podcast, and you were saying before we got our heads together, you were saying that people seem to enjoy last week's, weren't you?
Yes, which is very nice. Thank you for listening, and hopefully some of you have come back again to listen to this one. There was a lot of feedback on the deck chair situation, so I think we need to make a prototype of the perfect deck chair.
Do you think if I designed it, we could get some kind of blacksmith to build it?
Blacksmith? What, out of wrought iron? It might be a little heavy to move around.
I want it to be sturdy. I did specify sturdy.
Yeah, but not sturdy and immovable. Somebody said, which is a good point, they would like one that is chair height. That shouldn't be impossible, should it?
Huge. Yeah.
And the thing with the chair height, I think it was a lady called Janice Cox, who said the one with the thing with the sorry, I'll get my sentence out in a minute, just put my tooth back in. Thing with the chair height ones is that when you can't sit upright and have your legs out without your back going back, because they have this mechanism, don't they, whereby
yes, as you put your feet up, you plummet backwards, don't you, like a dentist chair? Yeah,
exactly that. What's that all about? Unacceptable.
Why are sun loungers lower? Why? You know, who went sun loungers are only for people with bendy knees? Who did that?
I don't know, because it's most unnecessary, isn't it? The more I think about it, the more I feel there's a gap in the market.
Yeah.
Anyway, deck chairs aside, how has your week been?
Difficult.
Oh dear.
Yeah. Mum was went into the BRI on, my brain keeps saying Thursday, but it's actually Friday.
That's hospital, right?
Yes, sorry, Bristol Royal Infirmary.
Is she all right?
Well, yes, annoyingly. Not annoyingly that she's all right, obviously. Not annoyed that she's all right, but annoyed that she went in and was all right. Annoyed for everybody's sake that it was an unnecessary trip to hospital, really, I suppose. So she has some pressure sores from, she sits a lot more. She sits a lot more these days.
Yeah.
She's less mobile. Her breathing makes her less mobile, so she spends a lot more time in her chair watching telly. And she has some pressure sores on her sit-upon from sitting upon it. And so she had leaned forward in her chair this day to try and ease the pressure on the sores. And as a side note, the very wonderful Ricky Reselling sent me a pressure sore cushion for my mother free of charge. And I'm sure most of your viewers won't know him because he's much more Instagram based, although he does have a fab YouTube channel as well. But he sent me a pressure sore cushion that he got, and he didn't want any money for it. So thank you so much, Ricky.
Oh, how nice.
No reason he'd be listening, but just in case.
Oh, that's really nice.
But yeah, so she'd sat forward. This was prior to the cushion arriving. She'd sat forward in her chair to take the pressure off the pressure sores, and then she'd gone dizzy. And in her wisdom, she thought, I think I might fall, and so I'm going to slide from my chair to the floor rather than fall. And I could see the thought process, but what she hadn't gone forward from was how she was going to get back up from the floor.
Ah.
Luckily, her friend Linda was due to come and take her some blood tests, so she wasn't on the floor very long before Linda arrived and said, "What are you doing down there?" But Linda couldn't get her up either. And so, because of the combination of Mum had felt dizzy and now she was on the floor, they called 111. 111 sent paramedics, and paramedics said that they would take her in to be checked over in case she had had a mini stroke.
Oh.
So the message that got to me was, your mum's in hospital with a possible mini stroke, which was, of course, a much truncated version of an actual event.
Yeah.
And caused some level of stress, as you can imagine.
I can imagine, but she's all right. They sent her
after all the necessary testing. They think perhaps not a mini stroke, perhaps just a dizzy spell. So they want to have a look at why she may have had that. They did CT scans and so on and so forth. They want to look at why she may have had the dizzy spell, what may have caused that, and go on from But yeah, so difficult week.
Oh heavens, yes. Yeah.
Because as well as the stress of it, the BRI is the least accessible hospital in the world,
Ah.
unless you arrive in an ambulance, in which case they let you straight in.
I thought it was an 11-hour wait outside these days.
Last time she went, it was. This is one of the reasons she tries not to go in if she can help it, because last time she went, she was in the ambulance for 11 hours and ended up with a urine infection and went a bit doolally with it. So this time, at least, she didn't have to wait in the ambulance for hours on end.
Well,
So,
that's good, I suppose. At least they weren't on strike that day.
yeah. How was your week?
My week was up and down, I think we could say. We've been away to Cornwall for the weekend. We went to Falmouth, which I've never been to before, and it was really nice. It's a really nice little town. I liked it a lot. But of course, Cornwall is pretty inaccessible for a quick trip for most people. It's just we're just over 2 hours it took us. But like if you went to Cornwall and you live in the southwest, which is part, Cornwall is part of, that would probably take you 4 hours to get
It's
to.
funny because I think people tend to speak of Devon and Cornwall as a place, Devon and Cornwall as a whole,
Yeah.
You live in Devon, and yet for you to get to Cornwall was still a 2 hour uphill and downhill trek.
Over
Cornwall
2 hours. Yeah.
Cornwall is for anybody who's not geographically inclined. Cornwall's the little tiddly bit that sticks off the bottom of the country, and where it gets narrow and pointy, and you've run out of motorway quite a while ago. Motorway quite a way up, don't you? And start
Great description, very accurate. Yeah, the roads aren't the best, but Falmouth was lovely, and it didn't rain while we were there, so that was a win. That was nice. But unfortunately, last week my brother lost his job very, very unexpectedly. He was made redundant, which was a bit of a sad
field
thing.
is he in?
Sorry,
what field is he in?
He something techie for he does sort of competitor analysis and stats in the mobile phone and broadband field.
Oh, I barely understood what you said, let alone.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't.
I could give him a job. I just wondered if it was a field in which it's easy to, in which is it a flourishing field or is it a?
Apparently not, as he's just been made redundant.
Yeah.
He's got a couple of opportunities. He's got an interview later this week for a similar but job that he was actually approached for by a different but similar company, so that's kind of nice. But it's just a nasty shock when you're not expecting. I mean, sometimes your company's restructuring or you've seen the writing on the wall and it's not a surprise.
Everybody around you's gone and you're sitting there at your desk waiting for the blow to fall.
Yeah, waiting for the hammer to come down. Sort of hoping it'll be sooner rather than later, just to get it out of the way. No, yeah, he just was very shocked about it, but he's okay, but just not a nice thing to happen. It dents your confidence a bit, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Has anything nice happened to you this week?
Well, we had nice weather this weekend. That was nice. Obviously, it was Mother's Day yesterday.
Did you do anything for Mother's Day?
We all went over to Mum's, and then we went to Wetherspoons, which was what Mum wanted to do. And the benefit of going to Wetherspoons on Mother's Day, whilst it may not be glamorous and exciting, is it's also not that busy.
That's always a win, isn't it?
Taking their mum somewhere better.
Do as you know, we've spent a lot of our time together as friends in various Wetherspoons, haven't we?
I like a Wetherspoons. It's reliable, isn't it? It is.
It does what it says on the tin.
Prices have gone up, but then everywhere's prices have gone up.
Oh, absolutely, haven't they just? Don't even get me started on Lurpak.
I gave up Lurpak a long time ago. I gave up even thinking I could afford Lurpak.
Well, absolutely, yes. I don't know who buys it now. Probably only minor royalty and.
They'll be the next people to go bust.
Yeah, they probably will.
Redundancies in the Lurpak factories coming up. I'm sorry if you work for Lurpak, by the way. I'm not trying to curse you.
I reckon they also make the cheap versions of the Norpak and the Dampak. Other brands are
the theory, isn't it, that it's all made in one big vat and then just portioned out into different pots.
Absolutely. I'm convinced. I'm convinced that there is no difference between any of them.
My dad worked for a margarine manufacturer in the 1950s, back when margarine was much more of a thing than it is now, when it was important. And he definitely said that they produced one product and it went into several different brands. Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me at all.
But he also tells me told me some horror stories about, big spillages being scraped up off the factory floor and put back into the vats and all sorts of stuff. So he didn't. I don't know who he worked for, so I'm not telling anybody to avoid any particular brand. And this was 70 odd years ago, so presumably the tightening of the health and safety guidelines over the last 70 years mean that your
Hopefully
margarine
that won't happen
is no
anymore.
longer full of floor scrapings.
My husband has a deep mistrust of anything other than butter in terms of spreading things, even for baking. I mean, bearing in mind the price of butter now, I hope he doesn't want to start regular baking because it will cost us more than our mortgage, I should think.
At least we do manage to make butter in an emergency, don't we? We did explore that once.
We did, yes. Made butter out of double. I was telling someone about that last week. Who was I talking to about that? I can't remember. But yes, adventures in making butter out of double cream. It ended up being more expensive, didn't it?
I think it did work out slightly more than buying half a pound of butter. But I think we bought cream at its usual price, didn't we? So I think
Yes.
the time to jump on it is if you happen to see it in the yellow sticker section, isn't it? That's the time to.
Yeah, after Christmas, possibly after Easter as well, when they've overordered
Hmm.
and it's going to go off.
But yeah, I'm gonna say it's funny that you should mention redundancies because our discussion topic is around the working environment, isn't it? This time, so
It is. I know vaguely what it was. Did it have an actual name?
it was bosses I have known, or words to that effect, wasn't it? Horrible bosses, good bosses, something like that. Yeah. Caroline, for the listeners' benefit, Caroline was on fire with ideas last week and sent me a long string of possibles for discussion topics, which means I haven't had to plug my brain in at all, which is always good.
Well, apparently we're still waiting for the HRT to kick in, so
You're a bit, yeah, yeah. You're not. Yeah. Sorry, bear with. Just put the hamster back on his wheel.
crack on.
Your note says bosses, best boss you've had, worst boss you've had. What makes someone a good boss? That's this week's discussion topic. Would you like to offer me your worst boss, and I'll see if I can trump him with mine? Not that mine was Trump. I mean, that would be dreadful.
I've got a selection of worst bosses. I was actually pondering this morning, whilst on the treadmill, which of my worst bosses was the actual worst, and I'm not sure I can pick one. I mean, the one that fired me, that was quite a low point.
Yeah, come on, let's hear about him then.
I was working for a well-known recruitment consultant company in Exeter. This was a long time ago, but this was before I had William, it was around the time I was married, so about 1996, 97. And he was a guy who was quite young himself. So I was like maybe 26, 27, and he was probably early 30s. And it was only a small office. There was a few of us girls and him, and he was the boss. And I feel like he just wasn't a reasonable person. He would allow his moods to dictate how he behaved. He could sometimes be absolutely delightful, and other times he'd be an absolute bastard. And we didn't really see eye to eye quite a lot of the time.
So you don't know whether you're getting Jekyll or Hyde. You're going into work each day wondering who's, yeah.
Yeah, we used to work. It was a new branch of the I don't know if they even exist anymore. Actually, it was Alfred Marks.
I remember them.
Yeah, back in the day. They merged with another company. They became Adecco Alfred Marks. Anyway, whatever. But it was a fairly new branch, so we were working quite long hours to set it up, and we worked most days from 8 till 6, which was quite a long day, and we didn't take lunch hours. And we had to go out one day, me and one other girl, leaflet dropping, or what? Not actually leaflet dropping, going to see businesses, but something of that nature, something salesy of that nature, going to find anyway, whatever. And we'd been out for a couple of hours, and it was around lunchtime. And on the way back, I can't even remember what shop it was. We worked in the centre of Exeter. I think it might have been Next was having a sale, and we went in and we each bought something to wear. I can't remember what it was. When we went back to the office, we were showing our colleagues what we bought. I think I bought a suit jacket. And he was absolutely incandescent with rage. I sent you out to work. What were you doing? So we haven't had a bloody lunch hour in 3 weeks.
Mm.
We
Yeah.
weren't much more, far more. It was just so unfair. We popped in for 5 or 10 minutes to next,
Yeah.
not even had a lunch hour for weeks and weeks, and he was just horrible, and he was nasty to the other girls as well. They didn't last much longer than me. I got fired. We used to also, we had a night, so the whole company had a night service, and we used to get calls at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning at home. We were on crap money.
Mm.
People go, "Oh, your lorry driver hasn't turned up for his shift. Have you got another one?" Yeah,
What, in my
where
bedside table?
yeah, absolutely. So it was like, felt like I was doing a lot of work for not an awful lot of money, and certainly not any gratitude, or and not being treated well. But they fired me. Their letter firing me actually crossed with mine resigning in the post. So that was the
Mm.
end of that.
Hmm.
What about you? What's your worst boss?
My choice, I had a choice of two when I was trying to decide which one was the worst. And I think that, funny enough, my decision for which would be the worst would not be the same as other people's decision. I think so. Though I had a boss when I was 16, 16, 17. I was working nights in a taxi company on the radio, the number two, can you do a pickup from the station, that kind of thing. And this guy came in and kind of poached me. It was very nice to be poached as a member of staff because that gave me quite a good feeling about myself. At the age of 16, somebody had come in and said, "I want you to come and work for me." That was very nice. And he ran a company that pebble dash houses, whatever, the
Oh yeah,
cladding, yeah.
yeah,
And he wanted me to come work in his office. He was looking for somebody for an office, to be a sort of secretary. And at 16, I felt like that was a quite a
yeah.
big achievement to be asked to go. And what he actually wanted to do was explore my personal boundaries.
I
He
hope
was
you made them very clear where they were.
he was very handy. He was extremely handy. He was a very touchy-feely It began with the odd touch on the arm and the in a reassuring pat on your hand, and when I didn't immediately clutch my pearls because he patted me on the arm, there was, there's a couple of times you think, I think he's just touched my bottom. And then you think, no, of course he hasn't, because I was 16 and I think he was in his 40s, and that to me meant that he was
Oh God,
fossilized, obviously, at that age.
yeah.
I actually think I believed that men in their 40s weren't remotely interested in anything like that anymore. They'd moved on. So there's a couple of times I thought, I think he's just touched my bum, and then it was like, no, he's dirty. No, he is. Now he's touching my. And then there's a moment you think I should have. I almost as if I should have protested sooner, and because I didn't protest sooner, have I given him implicit consent to continue? And so I started making sure that I was always facing him, but that was worse because there were bits on the front of me that he wanted to touch more.
My God.
So then I st- and can you, I'm 60. You're 16, so obviously, and of
Yeah,
course this was the late 80s.
yeah,
So people listening to this now would perhaps deal with it differently to the way I did in the late 80s, when you weren't quite sure what how and you didn't want to lose your job, all of that stuff, all of that,
yeah.
and so I kind of I'm not I was never a shy and retiring kind of person, so
You
I
do
kind
surprise me.
of I kind of tried to banter him off in a way, kind of like, you're a dirty old man or whatever. And in the end I said to him, if you don't stop touching me, I will start rapping your nails with the ruler. And he said something along the lines of, well, you've never complained before. And I kind of went, well, I'm complaining now, and I want you to stop it. And he did stop, but then the attitude changes in the office, and I'm no longer somebody really wants there anymore, And so I didn't stay very long after that. And so obviously it could have been a much worse story than it actually is.
God, what a revolting man. Good job you
Yes.
found your voice and were able to tell. A lot of people wouldn't, would there?
Yeah,
That's
it's kind of
not.
there's kind of a non-entity in the ending of the story, because I didn't, I didn't have to prosecute him, and it didn't get worse, and it all ended very tamely. But for a
Yeah.
lot of people, I think that would have been their worst boss. But actually, for me, my worst boss was a much, much nicer man who simply couldn't let me do the job that I was employed to do. So I was running his cafe. On paper, I was running his cafe, and I ended up leaving before I had a nervous breakdown because I couldn't run his cafe, because he wouldn't let me run his cafe, because he kept on trying to run his own cafe, and
Oh,
then asking me why I hadn't done the things that. So it'd be stupid stuff like I was supposed to be in charge of the ordering, and if you're running a greasy spoon cafe, one thing you need a lot of is beans. And so I'd be sending the shopping list, and I'd be saying, and we really do need beans, and we need and 3 days would pass and no beans would come, and I'd say to him, can I order the beans? And he, oh no, I'm going to order the beans later on. And
Oh
it sounds
God.
so petty. But then you got to the point where you've got no beans, and so you're going down Morrison's to buy beans to give to the customers. And he said, "Why have you bought beans? I can see that you bought beans. I told you I was going to order the beans, and I'm because you didn't order the beans, and I haven't got any beans." And this and the beans were just the tip, just a tiny part of the
Yeah,
job. So
yeah.
everything that he had employed me to do, he wouldn't then let me do, but then he also then wouldn't do them himself, and then so nobody was doing it. And then when the place is falling apart, he's like, "But you're supposed to run the place."
Oh
And
God.
it was yeah, it was like having both feet tied to a chair, and then have somebody say, "Why aren't you running?" You know. So he actually ended up being my worst boss simply because he drove me to beyond the limits of my endurance. Of I can't operate on this. I can't work like this. I can't do this. You're driving me bonkers.
Oh
And he was
God,
actually
yeah.
a very nice man, very nice man.
It's a shame, isn't it? I had one boss. It was in a job I had at the local council. It was a part-time job. I job shared, and it was after I went back to work when Will was about 5 months old, and I worked in biggish department with small teams. I worked in the admin team, it's secretarial job, office work, and the manager of our team was a woman probably about the same age as me at the time, maybe a bit older, a spinster. Not that that's particularly relevant, but I feel she was unhappy with her lot in life.
Yeah,
And she was honestly she wasn't an unpleasant person. She was actually okay as a person, but think she felt like she needed to do something to prove that she was in charge, type of thing.
yeah,
She would come up with the most bizarre rules that only applied to our little admin team, not to anybody else in the office, because she only
mm,
ran the admin team. And one of them that I remember was we weren't allowed to eat our lunch at our desks. You bring your packed lunch in. You weren't allowed to eat it at your desk. There wasn't a staff room or anything, so we couldn't go anywhere else to eat it. And on the day, I mean, I didn't eat. I like to get out at lunchtime, but just to get a bit of fresh air most days. And for example, if you'd had to go to the post office at lunchtime, or the dry cleaners, or any one of 1,000 things you have to do during the working week, you probably haven't got time to eat your lunch in that half-hour period while you're going to the post office and in your car and all of that stuff. So you get back and want to eat your lunch at your desk. We used to, and everybody else in the office was allowed to eat their lunch at their desk. It was no council-wide edict or department.
yeah.
It was just we were not, and there was no reason for it. You could, because I'm a great one for, well, why can't I do that? What's the reason for that?
If you can explain to me why, then I'll probably accept it. But if there is no
Yeah.
why, then there is no point.
I remember me and one of the other girls finding ourselves sitting in the ladies' loo eating our sandwiches once. That
Lovely.
was quite a low
Salubrious
point.
time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was quite a low point. But yeah, but as I say, as a person, she was actually quite nice.
Mm,
It was just she seemed to need to establish her seniority in bizarre ways.
yeah. So
Do
what
you
about
reckon?
best bosses? Sorry.
Sorry, I was going to say, do you reckon women or men generally are worse bosses, or does it all just come down to the
I
individual?
think it comes down to the connection between you and your the relationship that you have, rather than I think it's more whether you are as an employee how you relate to your boss than what gender they are, really, because
Yeah,
some men will work better for a man than they will for a woman because of whatever reason, maybe of feelings of built-in gender disagreements, or all of that
yeah,
stuff that was carried with us down the generations. Some women will work better for a man because, again, of there's that
the same
generational
thing.
thing, isn't it?
Yeah,
And then some women, I think, would work worse for a man because they have a resentment against being told what to do.
yeah,
Yeah, I don't know. I do think it depends. It's more about you than it is about your boss a lot of the time. But in a situation like you said, where your boss would bring his mood to work with him, then it's about the boss more than you, because you can't deal with that person because they've already woken up that day and decided to
yeah,
choose you, haven't they?
yeah. You do.
So best bosses. That was the other thing, wasn't it? Best bosses.
Yes, I've had some really nice bosses actually over the years. I had some really nice bosses when I worked on the cruise ships. Um, just nice, genuine people who didn't demand loads of stuff and were supportive. And it doesn't take much, does it, to be a decent boss? I
Mm.
think, if you need to be prepared to muck in, you need to be supportive, you need to not micromanage.
Yeah.
The other one that I had that was really nice boss was a lady boss I had in a job I had in a hotel in Torquay, who was much, I was about 20, she was about 50 odd, and perhaps she was probably about 40 odd, and I just thought she was 50 odd because I was young.
Yeah.
She was lovely as well, very supportive, and supportive of me bettering myself and, doing more stuff, and learning new skills and all that sort of thing, and training. And yeah, she was lovely.
Yeah.
What about you?
I think, I mean, the boss I have now is very good. She's very understanding. She does the rota with all of us in mind. She asks us if all, is there anything that you'd rather not work this week before you do the rota and stuff, which I think makes a huge,
Yeah,
rather than I've done the rota and then you have to ask to have anything changed, she does try to do the rota around, what's
that's really
what
nice,
works.
isn't it? Because
Yeah, so that's a huge thing. And I've had bosses before who were like, who wouldn't, well, I've done the rota and that's it, and I can't change it now, so it's tough. And you're like, I've got other commitments. So that's the thing. As a woman approaching 50 with a mother of 75 and pets and appointments right, left, and centre, you have other things that you need to try and shuffle in. So if you have a boss who will build the rota around you wherever possible, that's really helpful. And I think that's a big thing. Um,
yeah, I
but the
think that's
sorry,
it would also make you more eager as a well, not you, but what it would make a person more eager to help out when they did need you to do
yeah,
an extra shift or switch something round as
absolutely,
well, wouldn't it?
yeah,
That really cuts both ways.
yeah. But the best boss I've ever had has probably been self-employed. To be your own boss is it's not necessarily the most motivating. I'm not the most motivating boss of myself.
No.
So perhaps my time management skills as a boss of me need some looking at. But I don't think anything beats being your own boss. I don't honestly I think that's
Yeah, I agree. I think I'm pretty much unemployable now.
hmm. Yeah, it's like I said, I'm lucky. I'm lucky that the boss I have now understands me so well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think I'd find it very difficult to go into a more rigid job now, into something that's yeah. And I really wouldn't
Yeah.
cope with a pressured job now. I'm very lucky that my job is low pressure. It's yeah, there's no I couldn't work to targets. I can't work to my own targets. How would I work to anybody else's, you know?
Yeah, I think my brother sort of felt that as well after he got made redundant last week, and he's been very autonomous in his job and works from home and is able to sort of set his own timetable to a certain extent and all of that. And he's been doing that for 15 years, so it will be a shock to change, to do something else. So
Yeah, it's gonna be very difficult if you suddenly got to be somewhere 9 till 5 and have somebody overlooking what's happening. Yeah.
for sure, yeah. I think we better call it a
Yeah.
podcast for this
Whether
one.
it's been interesting or not, or I don't know. I mean,
I
I've been
quite enjoyed it.
forgetting the names of the chap who put his hands all over me, but I'm thinking back, that's 35 years ago, and if he was fossilized then, he must be dead by now, surely.
Absolutely.
He's probably a hale and hearty 70-year-old climbing mountains or something.
Chasing girls up mountains, no
Chasing,
doubt.
chasing girls up mountains, trying to get his walking stick up their skirt or something.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Like I said, it could have been a much worse situation than it was, but looking back on it, I think I have more justifiable fury now looking back because I'm like, you dodgy man. I was 16. You deliberately poached me from a job where I was reasonably happy so that you could have me in your office as a piece of plasticine to be molded. But anyway,
Give you a small round of applause for not swearing during any of that.
I'm quite proud of myself. Quite proud of myself.
You
Yeah.
did very well. And on that note, I think we'll love you and leave you until next week. Thank
Thank
you
you for
very much.
listening. It's been fun again.
It has. Yes. We'll see you all soon. Bye.
Bye. Bye bye.